Welcome students. Think global, act local is the slogan of the modern day world. In the face of economic liberalization and a growing phenomenon of globalization, how can regional economy be established and how can it go from strength to strength? We'll try to understand the very process, the very definition of regional economy, and what an honor to have Vice Chancellor Jawaharlal Nehru University, Professor B.B. Bhattacharya with us, an illustrious economist of India. Sir, we welcome you in our studios. With this question, that we normally tend to believe that economics is now ruling the world and politics is subservient to it. What's your expert view on it? It can be a layman's perception.
Well, first of all, freedom and development are two basic desires of mankind. We all love freedom, free to choose, free to speak, free to decide in what way we want to live. But freedom without development is also not a complete freedom. You might have a political freedom to go to vote, but if you are an empty stomach, don't have money to buy the food,
What use that?
then it's an empty freedom. So development and freedom are the two basic desires of mankind all over the world. The balancing is, however, differs from country to country. Countries like India who have complete freedom politically, but there are still lots of poor people. China does not give you political freedom, but they say first become rich
And then enjoy.
and
the
then
freedom.
talk about political freedom, freedom to speech. Relationships between the two is put in a nutshell by the famous political scientist Samuel Huntington when he says, politics is the most concentrated form of economics.
Yeah.
Behind all political decisions, you might find there is a deeper economic vested interest. On general public, we say a problem, oh, it is because there is a political interest. But each political interest essentially means the ruling community, whosoever they have a particular economic agenda. Let me give an illustration. Supposing you want to promote goods of your friends produced in your region, but they are not the best producer. Given complete freedom, people may like to buy goods produced by some other region. You cultivate the politician. Politician then says we must have freedom, nationalistic spirit. We must buy only this product. We must not buy somebody else, some other country product. So there is a vested interest. So modern days, as and when human beings have started becoming more and more conscious of this, globally there is a general emphasis more and more on development. Now some countries say, let's first develop and then we shall grant complete political freedom. A good example is South Korea. After the Second World War, they made a rapid economic development. But then last 20 years they say now, let's enjoy the economic freedom with political freedom. On the other hand, India, from the day one, we said political freedom is the basic birthright of every individual citizen of the country. But we put restrictions on certain economic freedoms. For instance, you can't buy foreign goods without paying a lot of taxes. So the whole world is essentially divided along this line with some balancing between the two. But the two are very closely related.
Sir, you made a very apt reference to Samuel Huntington's definition. Can we say that economics is now a disguised form of political hegemony? You are playing politics in the garb of economics, is it so?
It is true. In fact, modern day historians say the ultimate power of the nation depends on its economy. There is a famous book written by an historian called Kenneth Powell, Rise and Fall of Great Powers in Last 500 Years.
Yes.
Book ultimately shows whenever a nation had to become an international power, be it England earlier than America,
Now.
or now
And who
say
knows?
China or India, it is eventually the one who is stronger economically, that becomes eventually also politically a strong power. The reason is, which is put forward in a nutshell again by the great General Napoleon, when he told to his French army, an army marches on its belly.
Aye.
If the belly is full, people are happy. Okay? They're
So
ready
that is
to,
the perfect balance between
that's the
economics
perfect balance.
and
So the
politics.
modern days also, we know, in fact, we say now you don't need an army. If you are strong in economic sense, nobody will like to attack you. The good example, let's say very tiny Singapore, okay? Nobody dares to touch it.
For the obvious reasons.
For the obvious reason, because it has a powerful economy and it can use its economic muscle to destabilize other countries with political or army. Another good example is the mighty Soviet Russia collapsed not because there was a battle between America and Russia on the war front. The Russian army was as strong as American army. They had as many missiles, nuclear bombs, submarines, guns and tanks. But the battle did not take place. As soon as the Russian people started seeing in their television how the American people live with hot comfort and then start comparing how they live in Russia. So the discontent from that
Consciousness of that discontent.
immediately led to the collapse of the Soviet system.
Empire.
So from that we now know, to be a strong nation, first be economically strong.
So let's now come a little closer to the very specifics of our discussion, since we are talking about a regional economy and the importance, significance of regional economy. In this globalized world where economic liberalization is the rule of the day, the law of the day, how can we explore the possibility and how can we make regional economies establish themselves and make themselves as strong as they never were in the economic history of the world?
The word regional can be described in two ways. One, in a big country you have different regions. It could be the states or the geographic region or agroclimatic regions or even community living in a certain regions. That is one way of looking at it. Globally, however, regions are also described in terms of homogeneity of certain countries in a region. So we say sub-Saharan Africa or we say South Asia. Certain common characteristics geographically, culturally, socially and economically common. Now, purists will argue that in a globalized system, there is no need to have any regional blocks or regional identity. What we want eventually as a rational consumer, we want to buy goods or services, best quality at lowest price. It doesn't matter who makes it.
Race takes a back seat, ideology takes
Ideology
a back seat.
takes a back seat. We don't go and ask the shopkeeper that give me a shirt produced by my religion people. No. I go and ask, I want a shirt.
Simple.
Simple. I want a good shirt as low a cost as possible. Now, but individually, each one of us have also our political and cultural identity, national identity, religious identity, linguistic identity, caste identity. It can be modern day professional identity, intellectuals, farmers. If an absolute perfect rational man can say, I don't care any of other identities, I want only maximization of my
Profit.
economic welfare. I am a businessman. I don't understand whom I am employing, whether it belongs to my community or my enemy community. I want the best person, laborer, manager. Okay? But the real world is not so perfect.
As ideally it should have been.
As ideally it should have been, or as those who advocate globalization. On the other extreme, there are certain societies which has a total hostile view of everybody else. Fortunately, modern day there are not many. like say Myanmar or North Korea are few examples of that kind. We shall not buy anything from abroad. We shall produce everything ourselves, no matter how much costly it may become. Okay. So we shall sacrifice our economic welfare for the sake of our presumed identity. But in between also lies varieties of identities. For instance, we know all employers, while employing, also give a preference own community. Conscious, but the question comes is, how far do you go? Let me illustrate. Supposing you are an employer, there are two laborers who are available for work. One belongs to your community, but you know he is damn lazy. Okay? The other belongs to some other community,
but he is very
efficient. Now you might say, I may give some concession to my community, but not to the extent that I shall pay salaries to an absolutely lazy person. So there is always some compromise. So I say, okay, I am willing to give employment to my community people, but I also expect the person should not therefore take it for granted that is employment because he only belongs to my community. He or she has to also work hard, produce.
All these identities, say race, say nationality, say religion, say culture, anything, are all these identities a kind of barrier between prosperity and human being?
Take the case of the United States of America. People migrated from Europe, Italian, French, German, Russian, British. When they were in Europe, they rigidly defended, I am a French, I am a British, I am German, I am Russian. And they killed each other, millions.
In the name of that identity.
In the name of that
superiority.
But when they migrated to America, they lived as neighbors, worked together, forgot that they had originally been Catholics or Protestants or English speaking or Russian speaking or French speaking. So they say that United States of America is the example of globalization where people migrated to America. What was the motive for migration? To improve economic standard of living. In Europe, there was less opportunity, so you migrate to America. Today also, when someone migrates to America, what is the prime consideration? Not because you like Americans and you want to live with them. Prime consideration, if I go there, I shall earn more. So the prime consideration is economic betterment. Now, if that becomes a prime consideration, you will have assimilation. However, since everybody is not living in a global village, we also like to see our neighbors. We also think about socially, culturally. Say it starts from family. Okay. If my son is not the best, yet I appoint him as manager in my company. Okay. If you are rational, you will say, why should you? But then you will say, no, my son should benefit from my business. So companies in India will appoint their sons and son-in-laws, these days also daughters, as the top executives. Not necessarily they are the best managers, but because they happen to have a family. Now you can have an extended family, nephews and nieces. Then you can have a clan. Then people have village-based identity, and it goes like this. Finally, you can say nationality. They belong to my nationality or my community. So there is always a kind of compromise. There is always a compromise and balancing. Therefore, neither there is a perfect flat world, as borrowing the expression of Thomas Friedman. Okay, not there is a completely closed society. Gone are the days of complete closed society, and we say, okay, I don't care what happens to the rest of the world. In general, more and more people are getting educated. More and more people are moving across the world. Prejudices are coming down. Let me illustrate. Until you meet people, you start believing, oh, so-and-so community people are these, people are that. Once you go and live among them, and you discover, oh, they are like us. Yes. They are also good people, bad people. They also share the same human values. Then you start saying, why are they different from us? So, knowledge, spread of information, movement, they are the biggest channels of globalization, people start thinking, oh, Britishers are not all that different from us. Once you develop socially, you invite your friends, Americans or British or Pakistani or Indian, and you start liking each other. Yeah. Then you say, oh, they are not all that different from us. It is just that they live in some other country and we assume they are like this. So mixing up with the people, integration of the people, movement of the people, the global mass migration of the population is gradually bringing people, and biggest of this instrument of is television. Because even if I don't go to America, through television every day I am seeing what Americans do, their lifestyle, their family life. I know about what's happening. So gradually and gradually this ignorance, which leads to prejudices. Most prejudices arise out of ignorance.
Ignorance.
So that slowly evaporates. So it's a question of spread of education, movement, enlightenment.
So Thomas Friedman you referred to and his flat world. That sounds so wonderful, a definition of a world that the citizen of this modern world can ever think of. Is knowledge the thread and economy in fact the needle that weaves all those relationships based on, not on regionalism, not on religion or culture, purely based on money and knowledge? Is economy the real fundamental rock stone of the modern day civilization, taking a cue from Thomas Friedman's The World is Flat?
Actually, Thomas Friedman basically were proving the hypothesis originally developed by a man called Francis Fukuyama when he wrote his famous book,
The End of History.
End of History. What Fukuyama said philosophically, that like people of all religion, all culture, linguistic coming to United States and assimilated to become what is called American. 200 years ago, there was no person called American. Today, there is an identity called American.
It's an identity.
It's an identity.
Established identity.
So what Francis Fukuyama said, as the world will move towards more and more of globalization, integration and communications, gradually the world will be a global village in which the identity of national identity, religious identity, cultural identity, linguistic identity, caste identity, they will gradually melt. Only one identity that will remain supreme is a professional economic identity. I am a professor, you are an engineer.
That's purely excellence.
So it is pure. So what Thomas Friedman was trying to say, because immediately after the publication of Francis Fukuyama's book in 1992, 1993 Huntington wrote his famous book Clash of Civilization, where he showed no, it is not going to be assimilation, it is going to be a clash.
Open clash.
So people started since then debating which way the 21st century will move. Through clash, you see the clash means ultimately there will be one victor. Stronger political and economic power will submerge the junior. Okay? Whereas assimilation of Francis Fukuyama means there is no victor, no loser. Both are winner. You just mix together, you create a new synthesis. Like the American concept itself is a new concept. 200 years ago, nobody in Europe would have said, who is American? Okay. So since then, idea is debated extensively, globally, theoretically, at practical level. So Thomas Friedman trying to say, look, India, he began, as you know, the book in coming to Bangalore and saying, so you are sitting in Bangalore doing the job of America, speaking the American language, Indian youngsters talking like
Americans, call centers,
which means basically doing the job of America sitting in India. So the world is flattening. What he says flat, he did not say completely flat, he says it is flattening. It's flattening. So we can expect another couple of decades. Gradually the rest of the world will be integrating. What he did not say, however, the India that he saw is the urban, educated, professional India. He did not mix up with the village India.
Was that too vague a generalization, too hasty a generalization?
I would say it is, because what is happening, modern globalization is also happening among those who are educated. You see, if you are educated, if you have money, then you can buy television, you can visit abroad, you can go for doing jobs abroad and mix. Poor people do not mix with foreigners. Foreigners don't go and live with them in a slum.
They are first inaccessible to
Inaccessible. Poor people do not have the televisions and books. They can't send their children to America and come back and tell them what is in American life. So they carry on certain inborn prejudices told to them by somebody at some stage. Oh, they are like this, they are like this. So we carry tales against each other. Oh, this community is like this, that community is like this. And they have no access to cross-check it. So when we say the world is flat, globalization, all over the world, it's not merely in India, it is the top educated people who are getting integrated very fast. And they are the one because they are global citizens. Global citizen means you work in an organization, some Indian, some Chinese, some Pakistani, some American, some British.
Cosmopolitan. With no particular.
So you develop
identity.
a feeling of friendship, fraternity, you share each other's lifestyle and things socially gradually mix up. But if you are in a poor family in a village, you normally work within your community.
Oh, yes.
People you talk to are within your community. You don't freely mix. There is no TV to tell you. And you look with a suspicion, even if you see in TV, oh, these people are enjoying such a comfortable life. So it is a conspiracy against us, the poor.
That breeds acrimony.
That breeds acrimony. So the right globalization is when development does not remain confined only to cities, but comes down to the poor in the village.
It's a very relevant point, and the seeds of that exploitation can be traced back as 1846 to 1900. I'll refer to that famous book, The Two World of Cottons. That's regional economy and colonialism. So going by that, when France was interested in establishing a cotton industry in French Sudan, but actually what happened was not that just and even relationship between that bigger power and that weaker French Sudanese who were trying to have everything for the benefit of their masters, imperial masters. How can that relationship of economic exploitation be defined in view of Thomas Friedman's The World is Flat?
Yes, you have raised a very important point. I would like to explain there is a subtle difference between earlier globalization and present globalization. Earlier, that period of globalization was dictated by the colonial masters. They came and told Sudanese farmer, you cultivate cotton. Or they told the Indian farmers, cultivate Nile indigo. Okay. They told that, okay, you cultivate sugarcane because we will buy it and send it there. Or they took Indian laborers to forcefully to cultivate sugarcane in Mauritius, Fiji and whatnot. That is a globalization through gun. Today's globalization is fundamentally different. There might be subtle hidden agenda of economic benefits of one community against other, but there is a greater choice. It is my choice, do I go to America or to Britain or not?
You're the master.
I am the master. It is my choice when I go to shop that do I buy a South Korean make car or Indian make car. It is my choice, do I want to produce a car or television or do nothing. So the freedom that has come after the Second World War has made a fundamental difference. Earlier days, freedom was only in the hand of colonial masters. Today, I have the freedom. I can tell anybody in the world, sorry, I don't want to buy your product. Simple. You can't force me. You can't show me a gun. Or you cannot tell nobody else in India can make this. So there is a difference. However, at the same time, globalization, like it is spreading the differences among the rich and poor nations, it is also dividing the society within. We are seeing within our country one segment of the population becoming very fast developed. It is dividing in 4 ways society. First, dividing between city and village.
Villages. It's rural,
cities are getting urbanized, modern telecommunications, modern infrastructure, electricity. These are means through which globalization can occur. They are unfortunately in third world countries, mainly in the cities. Had this infrastructure come to the villages, things might have been different, but unfortunately didn't. First, so they are dividing rural urban. Second, they are dividing between regions. In a control regime, government could forcefully say, no, you must start factory in this and not that place. In freedom, people want to do their way they want. So what happens? Because different regions are differently endowed. So you now see in India, all investment going to Maharashtra, Gujarat, because that's where the market is. Businessmen understand language of profit. They will quickly calculate where is the profit. Third thing is happening is divide between educated and less educated. The beneficiaries of modern day globalizations and actually accompanied by what you call the knowledge economy is higher your degrees and skill, more is your income. So those people who have been historically higher educated, parents able to give you better education, access to better schools, engineering college, medical college, finance, business and all this, they are the one becoming richer and richer. So others resent one set of community people, and finally, because this infrastructure developments were not evenly spread when globalization started, different communities initially had different endowment base. Some communities, let's say, have been sending their children to school historically. Others are now beginning. Or some communities still don't send their girls to school. You know, the villages, and still there are lots of inhibitions about it. Now they find, this community, now they don't accept that this community, because they have adapted to the modern English language technology earlier than we, therefore they are getting better job. They will immediately attribute, they are getting better job because they belong to this community. Whosoever started English, technology and finance first are the one going to reap more benefit, because that's the knowledge economy. So, but because it has not happened evenly, therefore there is a very sharp rise in inequity. And rise in inequity is leading to the anger in the mind of the people.
And ultimately disturbing the very scheme of human relationships that actually economy would have added to. So thank you very much. We'll have to leave that a very, very profound description of yours halfway. We'll take up the rest of the points in the next part of our program. Thank you very, very much. So concepts are getting changed. This is the relationship of not between the one who exploits and the one who gets exploited necessarily, but this is the relationship between the borrower and a lender, where there is no coercion, there is all freedom, whether you want to buy it or not. With these words, we take your leave with this promise that we'll be back in the second part of our program. Till then, thank you very much.